This FedGov Today program is sponsored by NDIA, the National Defense Industrial Association. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the senior executive situation that's pinching government leadership.
They are dying out there because they don't have anybody they can talk to. The people who've been SESers for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, people who are looking for peers, quote unquote, and who don't have any in their own agencies.
Former OPM Associate Director Ron Sanders on FedGov Today in just a moment. You can join Defense Innovators August 27th to 29th in Washington, D.C. for the NDIA Emerging Technologies for Defense Conference. Features a great lineup of top government leaders, classified briefings, and a new global defense hackathon. You can see the current lineup and sign up at ndiatechexpo.org. That's ndiatechexpo.org. The Office of Personnel Management's rolling out some new executive development programs. OPM says the programs, quote, are closely aligned with the new executive core qualifications. Ron Sanders is president and CEO of Publica Virtu. He's former chief human capital officer at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and former associate director at OPM. Ron, welcome. It's great to talk to you again. Thanks for joining me. What do you see when you look over the prospectuses and the details of these new leadership programs? Welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Francis. And let me start by saying, since you've asked me, you're going to get a little history. I'm old, and that's what you get with me. But look, a bunch of us career Chicos got together in the mid-'90s and decided that we weren't going to send our real senior executives to FEI anymore, because they would go to FEI and they'd come back questioning whether they wanted to be a senior executive. FEI has, with some exception, always focused on generic leadership competencies. And by all appearances, that's what LEAG, I think it stands for Leadership for an Efficient and Accountable Government. That's what it looks like on its surface. When you called yesterday, I reached out to OPM and asked them, will you continue what FEI has always done, again, with some exception, and that is focus on generic leadership? And they said no. We've concluded, and as a bunch of us did in the 90s, that you could buy generic leadership stuff on the open market for those who needed it. And not every SESer needs it. What you could not do, and what is, in my humble opinion, inherently governmental, is teach new senior executives what it means to be a senior civil servant in the American government, not the European government, not government in general, but the American government, where power, where authority is derived. It's dependent. It's whatever Congress says you've got to do, that you're empowered to do, not what you decide to do yourself. And again, to make a long story short, I went to OPM. I said, what about this? And they said, it's fixed. And by all appearances, I'm here to tell you that it is, that LEAG and the new SES offerings will, in fact, spend far less time on generic leadership and far more time on the U.S. Constitution, on the law, and what it means to be a senior civil servant in the American government. Now, that's problematic at the extreme, and we can talk about that, but at the end of the day, that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
The prospectus for this, you're referring to correctly, the Leadership for an Efficient and Accountable Government, LEAG, and I'm going to call it the League just because we love our acronyms. And this is what the prospectus for that one says. Tailored for high-potential GS-14 and GS-15 employees aspiring to SES roles, League provides a strong foundation for advancement. The curriculum equips participants with essential leadership, strategic thinking, and program management skills, blending virtual and in-person sessions with interactive modules. This is the piece that I think gets at what you just talked about, though, Ron. League participants will learn to connect strategic policy with practical implementation while building a powerful professional network. That seems to me to be the money quote in that description. Is that what you're getting at, that idea of how do you connect these abstract leadership ideals to actually getting the mission of the organization completed where it is that this person's located?
That's exactly right. And I'll add this, and it occurs in the context of a constitution and an American government that gives authority to civil servants not that civil servants give authority to the people. Again, it's bottom up. The people give the authority to the government, who in turn gives it to civil servants. And they have to act accordingly. And as I said, a bunch of us got together in the 90s and said, that's not what FEI is doing. Now, again, I'll emphasize, there have been some exceptions. Suzanne Logan in the Bush and Obama administrations, for example, is one of them. But the current FEI director, well, the now defunct FEI director, and others always had to compete on the open market head to head with universities for those in offering those generic leadership competencies. And in my view, let the private sector or those universities have that part of the market. FEI should concentrate on what's inherently governmental, and that is what it means to be a civil servant in the U.S. And I have to add, Francis, I was taught that by people like Doc Cook and Tom McPhee. They're all dead. All of the mentors, all of the people who would teach you those things as you were coming up through the ranks are gone. FEI could take its place. They did not. Maybe they will now with this new curriculum.
All right. You've talked about FEI a couple of times, and I want to come back to that later in the conversation, Ron. But another one of these programs, these new programs, is called the Senior Executive Development Program. And this is the abstract, the description of this one. For SES, GS-15, and GS-14 leaders, the Senior Executive Development Program features a dynamic on-demand video series, including podcast-style discussions with accomplished leaders who share practical insights to enhance leadership effectiveness and impact. The program delivers transformative learning experiences that inspire action and sharpen strategic thinking. Interactive modules help deepen participant expertise and enable immediate application of new knowledge. Now, that sounds like nice marketing material, and I don't mean to disparage the effectiveness potentially of this, but it's less obvious to me about that one how it connects to what somebody turns off the video or stops watching the discussion and then goes back to his or her desk and actually does something with the information. What do you think should be included in those kinds of materials to make sure that that's what somebody's actually able to do? Connect what they learn to something that they do.
Well, again, the more emphasis on practical skills, on implementation and execution, the better. But I will tell you what I asked the senior OPM folks, and these included politicals. Will anyone come? Because, again, truth be told, we used to send our consolation prizes to the leadership and management development centers. People we knew would never be a senior executive, but who had either passed a senior executive CDP, candidate development program, or who had unsuccessfully competed for an SES job. They would love the opportunity, because we would say, here, you didn't get the SES job, but you get to go to this SES development program. And so I've told OPM, you're going to face skeptics. What I would do, and this is, again, what I told the senior OPM folks, I would focus on senior executives. They are dying out there because they don't have anybody they can talk to. The people who've been SESers for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, people who are looking for peers, quote unquote, and who don't have any in their own agencies. If they start going and they start concluding that what OPM is offering helps them on the job, then the people who are coming up through the ranks will do the same. But OPM needs to shift its focus. They already have to some extent. Again, I want to give credit where it's due. There's far, far, far more emphasis on what it means to be an American civil servant and far less on generic leadership. But they need to shift their focus to people who have been in leadership jobs in government, in the U.S. government for some time, because those people are just dying out there. They need somebody they can talk to, and having what is now what used to be called the Federal Executive Institute cater to that need, I think is important.
The piece about the league that was the most appealing to me was that idea, the last phrase there, while building a powerful professional network, that ability for those folks to know other people in other organizations that they would have never met any other way, and to be able to connect with them and not just interact with them while they're in the program, but interact with them when they're having an issue at their agencies, that they have somebody that can reach out to them that's a peer and who maybe doesn't know or need to know or shouldn't know the individual politics going on inside their agency or any of that kind of stuff that can give them objective advice or just listen and say, yeah, I relate to what your problem is. All right. The last item that OPM's rolling out here in these executive development programs is still kind of TBD. Senior executive orientation briefings and bi-monthly SES leading edge programs. And it says registration will open soon for these programs, which offer continued development of SES, aligning to the new executive core qualifications and the president's management agenda. I guess partially it's dependent on the fact that we'll need to have a president's management agenda first to be able to see how those programs flesh out. But what's, I guess, rather than specifically about those programs, Ron, what's missing in your view from the executive and leadership development landscape for the federal government today?
Well, I think what you've just read suggests to me that OPM is still going to continue to keep FEI and its leadership and management development centers in HRS, and it will still be competing head to head for revenue with academic and private sector institutions. OPM should get out of that business altogether. They should tell agencies, here's what executives need to know, and then leave it to those executives, or better yet, organizations like NAPA and its private sector partners to deliver, because those agencies by themselves are not enough. As you know, Francis, and I've been arguing about this for 2 decades now, federal agencies, to get their jobs done, need to collaborate with one another. So if you tell an individual agency, you develop your own senior executives, those senior executives will come up through the ranks thinking that they don't have to deal with other agencies except as external variables. They do not. They need to collaborate, something I learned in the intelligence community. So if I were OPM, I would, A, get out of the business of competing head-to-head on generic leadership stuff altogether. I would tell agencies, we don't have the capacity to do it. Here are some organizations that do. Send your new SESers and your more experienced SESers to these programs, because they're going to learn what it means to be an American civil servant.
All right, FEI. I read from the executive order that came out of the White House February 10th, 2025. The Federal Executive Institute, which was created by the administration of President Lyndon B. Johnson more than 50 years ago, is a government program purportedly designed to provide leadership training to bureaucrats. Bureaucratic leadership over the past half century has led to federal, and then there's language there that is in keeping with the position of the Trump administration. Federal Executive Institute should therefore be eliminated to refocus government on serving taxpayers, competence, and dedication to our Constitution rather than serving the federal bureaucracy. The Director of the Office of Personnel Management shall take all necessary steps to eliminate FEI in accordance with applicable law. All right. What is striking to me about the programs that you and I have already discussed in this conversation, Ron, is the Trump administration has taken a lot of criticism, rightfully, for burning stuff down. Is this, in your view, an instance where the burning down had to happen in order to create what they're now talking about, which is this leadership for an efficient and accountable government, senior executive development program, and so on?
Yes, but I wouldn't go as far as the current OPM has done and literally burn FEI to the ground. I think there are things short of that you can tell FEI that it needs to be doing. For example, we've just talked about that, without actually killing the institute itself. So again, I wouldn't go as far as the current OPM, but I will say this. I love what the current OPM is doing. Now, look, I'm an unashamed Republican. I'm not a Trump person, but I am an unashamed Republican. And I think OPM, with its emphasis on new performance standards, on controlling inflated ratings, on changing what new executives need to know, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all good things. I wish they had been done years ago. And the fact that this OPM is doing them is a good thing, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think killing FEI is a good example of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
It's great to have you on the program as always, my friend. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks, Francis.
You can read more about the new leadership classes on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. The Department of Defense is revitalizing a NASA concept for the 21st century. The technology readiness level will help the department, quote, evaluate technology readiness for humans. Chris DeLuca, Director of Specialty Engineering in the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, will tell you about it on the next FedGov Today TV. You can watch the debut on ABC7 in Washington and on the FedGov Today YouTube channel at 10:30 Sunday morning Eastern Time. If you missed the debut, you can watch anytime at fedgovtoday.com and on YouTube. The next FedGov Today podcast is coming tomorrow. You can avoid lock-in with the new discount deals from the OneGov initiative. To learn how from former OFPP Administrator Joe Jordan, follow the FedGov Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows, and you can listen on demand at fedgovtoday.com. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks for listening.